Hey people, welcome back to Redneck Gardening. I think this just be a short segment and I'll show you the origin of the word Hamas after this. Lucky let me know she was interested in how my planters turned out. So this burned about 3 days and then the torrential rains come and I woke up in the morning, it was full of water. So I'm going to give it a couple days to dry out before I set it on fire again. But rain is good. All your plants would much rather have some rain water than the city water. You can see some blooms starting to come out here on the squash. And my cabbage is loving that rain. So this grapevine I found growing here, it's not native. I don't know where it come from. I figure it was the Forest Commission when they had this property years ago might have planted it here. What I did is I run it toward this tree here. It's running south. I buried all the runners up and they'll all turn into roots. And then I found this old galvanized pipe and I placed it down on there. And I'm gonna fill this up with some good pot and soil in here. And what this does is when I want to fertilize this grapevine, I'll be able to fertilize just the vine and not the whole yard. And I'll just take the strongest one. Later, I'll see the strongest one, and I'll let it run up. And I'll cut all the others off. And so I cut all these little trees. There's a line of them growing by my fence. And I cut them all high. I'm sure my neighbors think I'm a crazy-ass redneck. But the reason for this is I'm going to take a old piece of phone wire and I'm going to string it across here and let them vines run across so it'll just be up hand high. So the grapes, I'll be able to get underneath here and mow, and the grapes will be right up here in my face when they come in. But they come off of a second year of growth, so I won't see any off here this year. But these will serve as dual purpose. Now I can weed eat up to it and not hit my vine. And these pines, they'll be rotted out in 3-4 years. But by then, I'll see if it's doing good. I'll be able to trellis. And so I cut these little pines off, and I cut them off. I cut them off high like this. Not use this high, but I do it for another reason. I do it in case I want to remove the stump. I can tie my truck up to it and snatch the whole stump out. So all the rains filled my water jugs up. You see how the screen filters out all the trash. And now I can just come over here and turn the valve and get my jugs filled with water to go water my garden. After they fill up, I've got this overflow put up high. So this water jug will fill up this high. And then it'll divert some into this jug. And I'll probably put another high jug up here to divert in so I'll have pressure. And so all my jugs are full of water. And I put some covers on them. And I learned if you have some scrap copper with silver solder on it, you throw it in the jug, it'll keep that water pure. I think it keeps some mosquitoes from breeding in it too. But the rainwater, it's always better for your plants. You can water them every day with city water, and they won't bloom until that rainwater hit them. I noticed that in lilies. So I had this old water tank. It was damaged. I don't remember where it comes from. I figured I need another water tank on a stand, so I cut the top out of it. It's got these baffles up inside of it. And the line was broke off, but I reamed it and I found this old valve in my scrap heap. And I took a measurement of where I wanted to stick it under one of my gutters. And I built a stand for it yesterday, or started on it. And so I'm definitely redneck. I got a bunch of scrap out here, people would call it. Most of it's stock. It cost me a fortune to buy it. They only give me 10 cents on the dollar when I scrap it. But I found these old 16 gauge galvanized studs laying out rusting, but they're galvanized. They're still going to last 4 more years. and I cut them off to fit and had those scrap, like a 3/8 plate there. And the trick to welding to this thin metal to a thicker metal is put your thick metal up. The heat's going to travel up and to keep it from blowing through so bad. So after I finish welding that leg brace on there, I'll weld this base here to the top of that, and that'll fit up underneath one of my gutters, and I'll have more rainwater from my garden. So my yard is a dump. So this comes from 40 years of my building, and contractors I worked for as a kid. After they died, their wife asked me to come clean the property off, and so I use it. This is all. I probably got $600 into this big barn here. It's got big doors. I can drive a big tractor through, and it was all hauled off from old jobs. It's all reused, reclaimed material. I got $600. I cut the trees somewhere. Somebody paid me to clear their property, and it cost me $600 for the saw man to cut all the lumber for this shed. When I started, I only had some blue and white material. I didn't have enough blue to cover the walls, so put a white on each end. So I thought I'd follow the same theme on this door in the back. And I put some skylights up there, so I have a little shelf up there I can start plants. Just get some light inside. And then I run across this job full of green material, and I finished all the walls and the roof. And so, no, I very seldom go to the scrap yard. You're just taking a chance of losing a tire. I save it up for when I need to use it. And it costs a fortune to go buy a piece of galvanized pipe like that. And for many years, I come home from the job, unload the trailer, load it up for the tools and whatever I needed for the job the next day, and it just sit. But, these here cost me $300 a piece, and I'm sure they go for about $600-700 today. And these couple of large I-beams probably cost about $8,000 a piece if I was trying to buy them. And they probably bring about $500 a piece. So I get about 10 cents on the dollar if I was to scrap it. So I just find everything a home in the yard. And if I ever need it, if it's just one bolt, it saved me $30 in fuel chasing down a bolt. So some people might call me a hoarder, but this gutter here would cost about $8 a foot. About $800 worth of new gutters here that was ordered wrong. And I'm sure I'll find a place for it. Custom built doors out of scrap, partially aluminum, partially treated wood. Homemade hinges made out of a piece of angle, a pipe, and a rod. So I paid $600 to have the lumber milled, and I probably got about $60 worth of screws, nails, and glue holding it together. This was my dad's old welder machine. I'm very familiar with it. I've been using it for 30 years. And after he died, I had built this trailer for it with no hitch so nobody steals my welding machine. I cut this axle down so I could put it in commercial buildings. I could put it inside and roll it around by hand. You put a little box here because they will definitely steal your copper. And as to safety gear, you got to have your hood if you want to get any good welding done. And, you can usually find me out here in nothing but my shorts and flip-flops welding. I'll put this board in between me. So I'm sure that the neighbors think I'm a crazy redneck. But anybody that's been watching my channel, I'm sure they know that I don't give a damn what anybody thinks. The other trick to welding this light gauge metal is it uses 7018 and it spreads more. It doesn't cut as deep. It's low hydrogen. It's a harder steel, so you won't need as much of it anyway. So this is what my stand looks like, and I'll put that jug on it now and get it tacked in place, and I'll have to turn it up sideways to weld it. So one man's trash is another man's treasure. I'll put a little primer on this. It's this thin metal. I don't want it to rust, but the rest of that galvanized got many years left in it. I'm just going to get a little paint on that so that don't rust. And I have tons of used screen that have much life in them, where I removed pool cages or rescreened them. And I'll run a bead of caulk around this edge and stick it on and tie it down. And after that caulk dries, I might remove the tie and trim the edges. And that'll keep all the straw and stuff from dropping in here. So it'll just be pure water and no mosquitoes. This is what we call a 3/8 bead in the industry. And that screen will just mash right on into it. And I'll tie it off around there and trim the edges after it's all dry. And it'll look about like that while I go find some paint for this. And here's an old can of Rust-Oleum. I don't know how long it's been there, but it's still good. Rust-Oleum's the best. The story of this Rust-Oleum was a redneck up in North Mississippi. He come off work off the boat and he seen that his mailbox was rusted up. And so he found some oil-based paint, but he needed some thinner. You know, his paint was like mine. It was old in there. He needed some thinner. He couldn't find anything in the shop but linseed oil. That's what we use on boats if we don't want to paint some bitch or something that lines are going to run over. And he thinned it down with that linseed oil, and he painted his box. And then 20 years later, the mail woman stopped by, and she said, you know, you got the only box that isn't rusting out. It's been here for the longest. What'd you put on there? So that was old Redneck from Mississippi invented Rust-Oleum. And I believe after that paint dries, I'll drill a hole up here for an overflow. So when it fills up, it'll come down and fill another jug. And I would never spend money on these fittings. This is all used trash. These fittings are expensive. I felt a drop of rain. I think the rain's maybe coming again. So I'm going to set this up underneath this hole in this gutter here in its spot. And that's it for this segment of Redneck Gardening. And I think I'll have time to talk about Hamas. And it comes up in Genesis 6 in that first paragraph about the Nephilim.
And everybody thinks Hamas is a terrorist organization. But they're not going to say that on Wikipedia because, you know, that's the left that runs Wikipedia. Islamic Resistance Movement, abbreviated as Hamas, is a Palestinian nationalist Sunni Islamist political organization with a military wing. And they say that this is just abbreviated, but it's not. It's a Hebrew word that they say means violence. And all my gardening tips run longer than I thought they would, so I'll give them another flick and read about this. But this is the first 12 lines of the story of Noah's Ark, where it's talking about the Nephilim. But being I said I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to at least read this one line. And what it says is, what shit? And you know that shit, S-H-T, it's corrupt. And you see the same word when it's talking about the flood at the end, and he says, I will never flood the earth again. And the Hebrew word is bullshitters. You know, bull, the flood, and shit, to corrupt, to destroy the earth, the bullshitters. And so what this says is, what shitters upon, to place upon, and Halem. And Halem is what you hear when the king's walking in Halem. And what shitters upon Halem? What menace? What menace comes? And you see that's anybody who pronounces that Hamas, that's just because they don't know how to read this. But it's a C-H-M-A-S, comes. And so you don't see the menace here, but and was filled the earth with violence is what, and men. The L followed by the A reads as an N, a men, and the A-E reads as an E-S. And so this is what a menace and R it comes. And what shitters upon Halem, what the menace are its comes. And so comes has a couple different spellings. It could be spelt with a GM or the HM or the QUM or the KEM. Have a different spelling. They have different meanings. But this is the come you'll see in alchemy, the war, and it means what'll come, means wars come and violence. The HM is the base for the will come, alchemy. So I'm gonna cut this off here, and I'll read. I'll get a reading on all this about the Nephilim, this beginning of Genesis 6, the wickedness of man, and next flick. Good day.